Hello and welcome to the first of a couple of videos about my January book haul from the Lifeline Bookfest. So there's quite a bit of it. This is the tray that we're dealing with today. And normally I do the Bookfest as a single video, but I just couldn't triangulate my head around it. I am still processing some of the books. Lifeline is a charity in Australia that all Australians will be aware of. It's a non-denominational charity. That is, it's not linked to any church or any other religious organisation. What it does is it provides a 24-hour helpline for suicide prevention and counselling for anyone in need. And one of the ways it raises money is through a whole range of charity shops around Australia, and they're pretty good ones. And in the larger cities like Brisbane, they do an annual book fest, during which they take over 2 or 3 halls of the exhibition centre, and you just have rows and rows of books set up. I really wanted to film it, but the noise in there was acute and I couldn't get my head around it. Now this year, Lifeline Bookfest had 2 main halls. They had one hall where everything was $2.50, and then they had the more expensive hall where they were individually priced. All the science fiction tables were in the individually priced area, though there was also a comics area which was also expensive. I feel like Lifeline are reaming the science fiction reader a bit because the prices were high. But this tray before you today is the smaller amount, and it is from the $2.50 shelf, as the thumbnail suggests. And we've got some interesting stuff here. So let's start with Agatha Christie. I know not everyone is into Agatha Christie, but she's one that I've been reading for many, many years. And a while ago, I decided that I would like to acquire all of her books and possibly even read some of them in sequence instead of randomly as I find them. I managed to find a number of Agatha Christie's, which I did not have, not by any means completing my collection, but I managed to get quite a few that I don't own and haven't read for a long time. Agatha Christie's in Australian op shops are becoming increasingly difficult to find, and they're becoming increasingly expensive when you do find them. Most of these are the Fontana format, which I do quite like. I don't necessarily think they're always incredibly comfortable to read. I find the spine's a bit harsh, but some of them do have nice artwork, and they are the general one that you see most often. However, there's the occasional panther like this one with artwork that I personally am not quite as keen on, but I do find panther a very comfortable heft and to read. And the spines aren't quite as rigid. Look at that artwork. That's pretty cute. Don't even know if I've ever read this one. Maybe back when I was a teenager. But again, they do have that very rigid spine, and you can feel the glue on cracking a little bit. I felt very, very glad to find one really old Pan, N or M. This was one that I didn't actually have, and it's in a fairly good condition Pan book. So I was quite happy about that. I especially love the difference in the artwork. Now, which one is this one? I think this is actually old enough to have a number on the spine. 259, perhaps? Something like that. Anyway, so that was the Agatha Christie haul, and I'm pretty happy with that. There's a few other random things. I've never actually read Winnie the Pooh. I've never owned the book. My parents weren't crazy about it, and so I never had it. I've got this nice little paperback. Its original price was 45 cents. It's not in great condition. It wouldn't do for a book collector, but I was quite happy to get it, and it's one of those ones that has got your traditional Pooh Bear illustrations, and I really do like the illustrations from these books, so I was happy to find that. Still in Kidland, Roald Dahl, The Twits, illustrations by Quentin Blake. I do like Roald Dahl. I've got a couple of his, like James and the Giant Peach, that I've had my whole life and really enjoy. I wasn't massively into him. I never had all his books. I never read all his books. And I haven't read this one before. I recently heard that there's a movement afoot to ban it because of the use of twits as a derogatory term. I'm not keen on that particular trend at all, and I thought if I ever wanted to read it, I'd better get it now while I can, having seen it. Still in Kidland, Ivan Southall is I don't know, an Australian author, must be was, and he wrote a lot of kids' books that were for older kids, so sort of maybe even what we'd call young adult today. Again, this is another one with a title that may well end up in it being banned one day, though the title was actually the name of a place. It was a manufactured town, possibly a mining town, that was under threat of being demolished, and the plucky gang of kids save it. Or at least that's what I believe it's about. Ivan Southall, you used to see him everywhere as well, and I have in the past had some of his kids' books, which are well written. He writes well. And very, very colloquially Australian in some ways, though older colloquial Australian rather than modern colloquial Australian. This is a 70s book, and I think that he'd been writing for about a decade. Not sure. I also believe, though I'm not certain, that this might have been one of his last books, so I'm happy to find that. Getting increasingly hard to find. While I was in that section, I came across Rip the Ridgeback by, I can't read that, Milder L. Arsians, The Adventures of Rip the Ridgeback, a Rhodesian story. And I'm not going to lie, it was the cover. The artwork on this cover is spectacular, and it's a wraparound. But it also occurs to me that I've never read a Rhodesian anything. And animal protagonist, if you look closely, you can actually see how well drawn that ridgeback is. You can see the ridge on it. So I got that. I'm quite happy with that. It's obviously a kid's book, and I have to be in the mood for those, but the mood will come, I'm sure. And that artwork. So while in order to price gouge, I've got to say, Lifeline did separate out most of the science fiction books into this one particular area. They didn't always get it right. J.G. Ballard, Empire of the Sun. Now, I know I read this, but it was an awfully long time ago. I was young. I haven't seen a copy recently, and I picked that up. It's in appalling condition, but it still works, and I will read it at some stage. What else? The Magic Labyrinth by Philip Jose Farmer is apparently not science fiction enough for Bookfest, so I got a copy. Again, not perfect condition, $2.50. It's a bit odd that the cover is missing a little bit. It doesn't quite fit, but you know, that one's there for the reading anyway. And next, I shouldn't have done this. Clifford Simak, The Werewolf Principle by Pan Science Fiction. It's got the lozenge. I love the lozenge. And look at that artwork. That artwork is stunning, and I loved it. And the second I saw it, I knew that I had to have it. However, it's not the only Werewolf Principle by Simak I have. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I also have this hardcover. I was actually looking for some more of these hardcovers. I really like the Gollants, I think they are. Gollants. Little red hardcovers. But you can't find them very often. I also own another paperback that is right here somewhere. Ta-da! This paperback I don't actually like as much. The artwork on it doesn't wow me. Certainly not compared with this beautiful, beautiful lozenge. So this one's probably going to go by the wayside, but these two I'm hanging on to, and I'm happy. Very happy about them. What else have we got here? Oh yes, George Orwell, Animal Farm. This is a very nice little penguin. It's a numbered one. Penguin Modern Classics, number 838 apparently. It looks like it's in appalling condition, but actually it isn't. Because what someone out there has done is they've wrapped it in plastic. Not contact, but actual proper plastic wrapped around. I'm going to take that off, clean it up, and have a look at it. Animal Farm was the Orwell I liked least. And I haven't read it for a long time. It's overdue a reread. Why didn't I like it? Well, probably for the same reason there were never any copies of Pooh Bear in the house. It's anthropomorphizing animals is not something that I'm that cool with. I'm the only person I know that didn't love The Lion King. Those aren't animals. Those are humans. Why are people pretending they're animals? So that is my problem with Animal Farm. For long gaps of time, I can forget that we're trying to pretend they're geese and plow horse and stuff and get with the plot, and I enjoy it. But the animal thing just doesn't wow me. Okay. What else have we got here? We've got a few things left to go. Anna of the Five Towns. That is another book that I already own. It's somewhere here. Yes, I got it out in preparation. This isn't a bad copy. It's a Penguin Modern Classics, and it's got a beautiful detailed artwork on the cover, but it's in shocking condition. The spine is barely holding on. So when I saw this Penguin number 33 in what is quite spectacularly good condition, I thought I can't really resist that one. So I've got a new copy of Anna of the Five Towns. Great book by Arnold Bennett. I want to read the other ones in that series at some stage, but I don't have them. Moving right along to a bit of a weird one. James Hadley Chase. Now, if you're not familiar with James Hadley Chase, then you probably weren't reading thrillers a couple of decades ago, despite the incredibly lurid covers, which I quietly adore. James Hadley Chase was a pretty significant author. He's an Englishman born. He was born in 1906, and he died in 1983. But he had an interesting history. Even though he was born in the UK and educated there, he married, I think, first, and then moved to Europe. Now, after a while of doing various things, including sales and stuff, Prohibition and the Great Depression in America brought this gangster culture, Chicago gangster culture, into being that ended, I think, before World War II. But that suggested to Chase that there was a big demand for gangster stories, and he started writing them. His first one was No Orchids for Miss Blandish, and I used to have that. I used to have quite a few of James Hadley Chase. I don't anymore. And he went on to write, I think, 90 novels, 50 of which, last I counted, had been adapted into movies, which is a huge number. He is also known as the king of crime, at least the king of European crime. He's an international bestseller. And like I said, despite these incredibly lurid covers, which I think are the reprints from the 80s, I really used to love these thrillers. I used to have a lot of them. I used to read them. It's been a long time since I read any, and I don't have any anymore. You used to see these everywhere, and they're starting to vanish. So I thought to myself, if I ever want to read a Hadley Chase gangster criminal book again, then now's the time to start getting a few before they all vanish. Still in America, James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time. This is also a nice little penguin. I think it's is it a numbered one? Yes. 32 something or other? 2237. I know who Baldwin is, obviously. Never read any of his work before, and I saw that and I thought, rather than going for TikTok or Instagram for knowledge of race relations, maybe actually read a book, because it doesn't seem like you can escape it. Albert Camus, an old favourite of mine, who I haven't read very much of for the last, quite a while. So I found these two, again, beautiful penguins in lovely condition. I don't know where all these beautiful penguins in lovely condition came from. Exile and the Kingdom, which I think I read a long time ago and definitely needs a reread. And that is a number 1865. And The Fall by Albert Camus, that one I definitely have read before, but I'm keen for it again. And that's a 1762 if you're interested in that sort of thing. Nice artwork. I especially like the artwork on The Fall. They are not huge books, but Camus is very rich. It takes me a long time to read him. So when I'm in the mood, those will be there. What else? The Innocence of Father Brown by G.K. Chesterton. That's one of those books that everyone talks about and which I've never read. Now might be the time. In Penguin Crime Green 765. Somerset Maugham? Somerset, however you pronounce that, The Razor's Edge. Another one, I don't know if I've never read this, but I've certainly read it so far in the past, if I have, that I don't even really remember reading it. So, add that to the rather large stack that's happening here. Bring the stack around a little bit. Share the stack with the viewer. And drop things everywhere. Okay, whatever. Next is Doctor in Love by Richard Gordon, which I couldn't resist starting to read as soon as I got it home. Now, Doctor in Love is 50s comedy novel by a British writer, Richard Gordon. And he was actually a doctor. I think he was an anaesthetist as well. But he turned himself away from doctoring and started writing this series of Doctor in Love, etc. The era of doctor and nurse humour that he's writing about is actually the same era that my mother was a nurse, both in Melbourne and England and randomly in Denmark as well. So a lot of the things in here remind me kind of various stories she told. It is very humorous. The level of humour is English humour, so it's good. I enjoy English humour. It can at times get a bit much. I think in the first third charmed me. About at the halfway mark, I was thinking, do I really want to finish this? It was nearly a DNF, but it picked up after a while, and I think I'll keep going. It's not a fast read. It's not a fast read, partly because I've been busy, but also because it's just the writing is writing that you need to concentrate on to enjoy. So that's been taking me a while. Only 2 more to go in this lot. Lassiter's Last Ride by Ian L. Idris. I read another Idris recently. That one was about John Flynn, who invented Flying Doctor. That was a great one. Idris writes stories from early Australia, and Lassiter's Last Ride refers to Lassiter's Reef. Lassiter's Reef is this old myth that Australia used to have. And is this the 50s? No, I think it was earlier than the 50s. So, this was first published in 1931, apparently. Okay, so Idris was 1930s. 1930s to 50s, maybe? Anyway, so Lassiter was a guy who claimed to have ridden into the middle of the outback and found a whole reef of gold. Now, unlikely as that may seem, back in the days when travel was by camelback, and not too many people had been into the outback except, Aboriginals who's lived here from yonks and yonks. They knew it well. Settlers, not so much. So when Lassiter came back with this story about a whole reef of solid gold poking up from the desert, a lot of people believed it. And a lot of people went looking for it. And a lot of people died doing that. So I know the myth in general, but I've never read a book about it. Ian L. Idris, he's got a good style, but it is very dated. You have to be in the mood for something that was clearly written a long time ago with slightly different conventions in mind. And here we have the last one for the low quality books. Alive, Alive, Oh, and Other Stories by Osbert Sitwell, which is a Pan Book Limited. There were 2 Pan books of the same era side by side. And at this stage I was starting to think, I've bought way too many books. I should be cutting back. But the book itself charmed me. I loved that illustration on there because, ocean. Easily caught by ocean. The book itself is this gorgeous old Pan that's old and cute and number 19 something or other I can't read properly. Alive, Alive, Oh. Does Pan tell you on the inside? 19. Oh well. Old book. And when I read the back and I read a little bit in the inside, then yes, it is set in the sea, so I couldn't resist this one. I've been trying to find out anything about it online without a huge amount of success. I think it might be quite rare. I've certainly never heard of it before. So anyway, there is my amazing $250 book haul. I did buy more books than I intended, but I kind of always do at Bookfest. I'm still processing them all. These need some cleanup. And I've got even more from the high quality section. I definitely spent more there than I intended. The science fiction tables were not as good as I'd hoped. There were a few books that I was hoping to pick up that I didn't find, but I did have a lot of fun with them, and that will be the next video. In the meantime, go out, go forth, get book hauls that make me feel better about my uncontrolled book buying habit, and then read good books. See ya.